It's a mystery. Only the trace evidence may give us an answer.
In an affluent Connecticut suburb, a young mother is found dead behind the wheel of her car.
There was no skid marks. Things weren't adding up.
Impossible to have a body moved to this location.
Dr. Henry Lee searches for a disappearing trail.
We'll have a piece, but what's the rest of the puzzle looks like?
The police in West Hartford, Connecticut, responded to a traffic accident and found Catherine Manfredi, a mother of 3, dead in her car. But the more police investigated the scene, the more suspicious they got. So they called in Dr. Henry Lee, who specializes in letting the evidence tell the story. When police arrived at the Manfredi house, they found a large pool of blood on the driveway and blood in the garage. A neighbor who was taking care of the Manfredi children said she'd been told Kathy had been vomiting blood before she drove herself to the hospital. Investigators suspected they were looking at a possible homicide.
All my years investigate traffic accident cases, the victim's body with a low-speed impact, most likely behind the wheel. Somehow her body tangled in such a way. Her injury is in the back.
Dr. Henry Lee went back to the accident location at Sheep Hill Drive to reconstruct the accident. Dr. Lee suspected that Mrs. Manfredi had been injured before the accident. If so, there might be trace evidence to prove it. And there was, on the chrome instep area of the driver's side door.
You see this vertical, low-velocity dripping?
Right.
That instep area? That should be covered when the car door is closed. How the blood get to this side?
Since the door was closed when the car hit the pole, Dr. Lee concluded the blood must have been there before the crash, a critical discovery that seemed to rule out the possibility that this was an accident.
Absolutely.
Dr. Lee's experience led him to suspect that a substantial impact close to the ground had taken place. To prove his hypothesis, he asked Major Tim Paulbach to reconstruct a similar impact spatter. The experiment confirmed that the pattern on the garage had come from a significant impact close to the ground. Investigators used an oblique lighting technique which allowed them to see blood residues that appeared to have been cleaned up.
We use a side lighting technique, approximately 100 of the little blood spatter. Those are consistent with a medium velocity force of impact, which is inconsistent with what Dr. Manfredi's story, his wife vomiting blood. We saw a 40-some inches long smear from up and downward. That's consistent with contact smear. In addition, we noticed some head hairs and tissue-like material here on the shingle.
Dr. Lee and Tim Paulbach use a life-size forensic mannequin to show what they think happened the night Mrs. Manfredi was killed, and how her body was removed from the house without leaving a blood trail inside.
He then dragged her body inside of a garage, put the body down, apparently ran into some difficulty. So finally what he did, just put the body sideways in the front seat. He sit on top of her body.
In the end, the jury found Dr. Manfredi guilty of manslaughter.